two children came to my door. They were asking for help, but something was very wrong. Their eyes. Their eyes were completely pitch black. The black-eyed children, or black-eyed kids, legend is one of the internet's modern urban myths, and it's an undeniably unsettling one. These stories began circulating mostly in the United States from the 1990s onward. Witnesses claim that children, usually between the ages of 8 and 16, with completely black eyes knock on their doors, approach their cars, or ask for help. These children speak in an oddly calm, emotionless manner and typically say things like, "Maybe come inside," or "Can we use your phone?" But the most disturbing detail in these accounts is this. People say that when they look at these children, they are suddenly overwhelmed by an intense feeling of fear. Their eyes entirely black, no iris, no sclera. And when they are not granted permission to enter, they usually vanish abruptly. The origin of the legend is often linked to an incident described by journalist Brian Bethel in 1996. Bethel recounted that while sitting in his car in Texas, two black-eyed children approached and asked if they could get in to buy movie tickets. His account spread through early internet forums and eventually evolved into a widely known creepypasta-style legend. This is the main summary of the story, but the phenomenon is far from simple. Let's begin. Bedell's account is the first widely circulated case that sparked the spread of the modern black-eyed children (BEK) legend both personally and online. However, because there are older folkloric motifs with the same theme, it cannot be considered the single, absolute starting point. Battle's experience, which he claims occurred in 1996 and later published online around 1998, is accepted as the first broadly recorded incident that triggered the modern proliferation of BAK stories. Many sources describe it as an ignition point of the legend. However, it would be incorrect to say that the motif on children with pitch black eyes has no older roots. Throughout human history, themes such as changelings, fairies swapping human babies, depictions of uncanny or dangerous children, and stories resembling the vanishing hitchhiker contain similar emotions and narrative structures. In other words, modern BAK stories are a contemporary adaptation of much older folkloric concepts shaped by today's horror aesthetics and by the internet. Skeptics and folklorists emphasize that before Bethel, there are no verified historical documented cases of BEK encounters. Most stories spread through friend-of-a-friend chains, lacking any concentrate evidence. Therefore, academic and skeptical sources acknowledge Bethel as a trigger of the modern legend but warn against confusing the origin of the myth with its deeper cultural roots. As mentioned earlier, long before Brian Bethel's story, many cultures already had figures resembling dark-eyed, disguised, seductive, or threatening supernatural beings. The black-eyed children legend can be seen as a blend of these ancient motifs. Since antiquity, eyes have been associated with the human soul. That's why completely black eyes, missing both iris and whites, suggest soullessness, demonic presence, or possession. In Mesopotamian and ancient Egyptian texts, demons or cursed individuals are described as having lightless pitch black eyes. In Greek mythology, beings like Empusa and Lamia lure their victims with their charming appearance but are also described as demons whose eyes sometimes darken. In Christian demonology, black eyes are a sign of demonic influence or possession. Even during the medieval witch trials, something we'll explore in detail in a future video. Some accused witches were recorded as having eyes as black and dull as stars. Similarly, vampires and seductive entities like the succubus and incubus are often said to ensnare humans with darkened eyes. This creates a duality very similar to the BEK presence and innocent or attractive facade paired with unsettling darkness. Perhaps the closest older parallel to the black-eyed children theme appears in Celtic challenging myths. Fairies, the Fae, were believed to abduct human babies and leave behind false children. These substitute children were often described as strange, black-faced, emotionless. In certain Irish and Scottish tales, these beings are said to have eyes black as ink. Additionally, in Japanese folklore, the legend of Kurumi no Onna, the black-eyed woman, describes a spirit whose eyes turn entirely black and who drains energy from humans. Korean and Chinese folk tales also include motifs of evil spirits that take the form of children, especially those who knock on doors at night. So the idea of a familiar-looking yet no human child has existed for centuries. The 1800s, during the rise of the spiritualism movement, especially in England and the United States, stories about the child spirits visiting homes were widespread. Some accounts, particularly those recorded in Victorian era scenes, include details like the child's eyes were completely black. Its pupils expanded as it looked at us. This shows the connection between the BEK legend and the Gothic horror tradition of the 19th century, and how it carried into the modern era. In summary, the black-eyed children legend is certainly not an entirely new concept. It is the combination of three ancient themes that have existed for centuries. Dark eyes representing soullessness or demonic presence, a demonic entity in the body of a child challenging, supernatural visitor trying to enter without permission, vampire spirit. Modern storytelling simply transported these old fears into the suburban setting of the 1990s and into the narrative style of the internet. In fact, it's fair to say that this legend exists almost entirely because of the internet. Although Brian Bethel claims his story happened in 1996, it spread only after being shared in 1998 through paranormal email lists and early internet groups such as ELT.metaphysical and ELT.paranet.ufo. At the time, internet users were few, but the paranormal communities were extremely active. Stories about UFOs, demons, and spirits were shared through long chains of forum posts. Battles text circulated through email chains as though it were a real event. People began to claim that they too had seen similar children in their own towns. Thus, the legend was born and multiplied digitally for the first time. Unlike traditional folklore, it spread without any physical community. Between 2000 and 2010, websites like 4chan, Something Awful, Unexplained Mysteries, and Creepy Forum became the modern storytellers of the internet. BK stories were rewritten as creepypasta on these platforms, each with a different city, a different witness, a different detail. Through these online retellings, the legend detached itself from geographic context and became a universal image of the dark child. People began writing their own versions. Short horror anecdotes such as "They knocked on my door at night but I didn't open" spread rapidly. After 2010, the story evolved into something entirely different. On platforms like Reddit's No Sleep, users began recounting BEK encounters in a cinematic, immersive style. On YouTube, hundreds of videos appeared under titles like Real Encounters and Caught on Camera. Most were fictional or short films, but they gave the legend a visual form. Around the same time, internet-born horror figures like Slenderman, Momo, and the Reg emerged as well, making BEK a kind of forerunner of that generation. By then, Bethel's story was no longer just a piece of text. It had become a symbol of internet's ability to create its own myths. In the post-2020s era, BEK stories on short-form platforms evolved into mini videos and reenactments. On TikTok, especially, POV videos with themes like "The children who knocked on my door had black eyes" reached millions of views. With the advancement of visual effects, the pitch black eye aesthetic became a horror visual trend. At this point, people were no longer reacting to the story, but to the image. This is what kept the legend alive and visually reproducible even after 25 years. Black-eyed children are considered the first purely digital-born horror myth in the story of folklore. Without the internet, this story likely would never have existed. The internet created, globalized, and evolved this legend. Let's break down this evolution chronologically. Brian Bethel's account, which surfaced in 1998, was extremely simple. While sitting in his car at night, two children approached and asked for help buying movie tickets. Bethel suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of fear and then realized their eyes were completely black. That was it. Stories from this early period typically followed a fixed pattern. Two children, sometimes one boy and one girl, their eyes black, yet their behavior seemingly normal. They appear in front of a house or car. They cannot enter unless they are invited. The witness feels fear and the encounter ends there. These early stories relied on unnecessities and ambiguity. The lack of detail made the unseen frightening, essentially a minimalist form of horror. After 2005, however, the situation began to shift. The classic minimalist fear gave way to a mixture of conspiracy and paranormal speculation. During this period, BEK stories were no longer interpreted as merely strange children. They were reframed as supernatural entities. New elements emerged. Demon, alien, or hybrid being theories, especially popular in UFO forums. Children causing electromagnetic disturbances, lights flickering, devices malfunctioning. Witnesses claiming physical effects such as noceblas, headaches, or insomnia. Descriptions of the children becoming more uncanny, pale skin, outdated clothing, the robotic speech. People were now debating, are they spirits, aliens, or demons? By 2013, as social media culture became deeply integrated into everyday life, the BEK legend also became part of popular culture. Short films and documentaries titled Black-Eyed Kids were produced. Videos claiming to be real camera footage went viral on YouTube. Reddit's Arnold Sleep community embraced the mythology by storytelling. Now, the children were appearing not only at doors but also in dreams, hospitals, and hotels. Some stories gave BAKs tragic backstories, like children searching for their families. This phase added emotional depth as well as cinematic style. Horror now came not only from their appearance, but also from themes of a lost piece of humanity. The version blended with today's meme-driven internet culture began taking shape around 2019, turning BAKs into an almost entirely visual icon. On TikTok and YouTube, short 15-30-second videos such as "The children at my door and their eye went black" became widespread. In these versions, it's the image, not the story, that dominates black-eyed, child face, sudden sound effect. Some creators even merge BAKs with entities like Slenderman, the Reg, or the Hatman, creating a shared universe feel. Black-eyed children is no longer a fixed story. It's an evolving horror archetype. This evolutionary process also changed the purported thoughts and symptoms experienced by witnesses. Most witnesses say that the moment they see the children, they feel an inexplicable sense of fear and dread. This is usually described as heart pounding, tightness in the throat, shortness of breath. Some witnesses say they felt disturbed even before the children spoke. Something was wrong. At first glance, this seems natural. The human brain is extremely sensitive to facial recognition when a face looks human but not entirely normal, such as eyes without any white. It triggers a sense of unease. This uncanny valley effect is a core principle behind many horror stories. The amygdala, located in the brain's limbic system and responsible for processing emotions, plays a major role here. This tiny, almond-shaped structure regulates basic emotions and contributes to emotional memory. So, when we encounter something we have never experienced before, our brain automatically shifts toward fear or anxiety. Some witnesses say that when they made eye contact with the children, they couldn't move, that their bodies locked up. Some describe it as like paralysis, while others say it felt like being under hypnosis. There are also those who claim the fear persisted long after the encounter. People describe lingering effects such as seeing the children in their dreams, feeling the same fear in the dark, or panicking whenever the doorbell rings. Some even describe the experiences as traumatic, especially those who lived alone or who encountered BEKs at night in their homes. This amplifies the psychological impact. Encounter becomes not just a momentary scare, but an ongoing sense of paranoia. But after the 2000s, some witnesses also began reporting physical symptoms: nausea, headaches, nosebleeds. Those who connected the events to aliens and UFOs claimed that the temperature dropped when the children approached or that they felt an electrical humming. Whatever the case may be, the BEK legend is not only a supernatural encounter, it is also a perfect example of how the human brain's fear circuits can be triggered. As with every story, there are constants here too. The most prominent is that they ask for permission. In fact, this detail is what intensifies the fear. So let's explain why. Doors, thresholds, interiors. These are powerful markers in folklore that separate inside from outside. Granting permission to cross the threshold and enter usually signifies trust, belonging, and control. In many old tales, fairies, vampires, malicious spirits, violating that boundary is an important metaphor. Protecting the inside is protecting the social order. In BEK tales, the children ask to be let in. So if permission is given, the boundary is deliberately removed. The victim's consent therefore becomes crucial to the pilot, and that's where much of the tension comes from. Although norms vary between cultures, the expectation to help when someone knocks at your door and the impulse to be hospitable is strong. That impulse is even stronger toward children. The story exploits the moral dilemma. We don't need a complex philosophical analysis here. Two simple, opposing questions to the world. Is it wrong not to help the child? But what happens if I let them in? This dilemma traps a person's conscience. It heightens psychological tension. This ethical confrontation is at the heart of legend's ability to terrify. People increasingly perceive the outside world as dangerous and unknown. Therefore, the figure beyond the door creates deep fear in the collective conscience. The image of black-eyed children knocking, asking for access to our private space, is a direct reflection of that cultural anxiety. Modern society is growing more individualistic. People are becoming isolated, neighborly ties are weakening. A child normally symbolizes innocence, but here the child is danger wearing a mask of innocence. In other words, it exposes a paradox of modern life. The threat no longer comes from the unknown stranger, but from the familiar. Putting aside the question of whether the legend is true or fabricated, whether it evolved consciously or began as a prank, it clearly fits social dynamics very well. Besides psychological interpretations, these societal fears can also be examined neurologically. Briefly mentioned earlier, the amygdala, sleep paralysis, the anterior cingulate cortex, and related phenomena such as pareidolia could each feel in entire documentary. If you would like a deeper scientific treatment of these topics, say so in the comments. And please don't forget to subscribe our channel and hit the notification bell. In the digital age, producing evidence is easier than ever. But ironically, this abundance has only reduced trust. YouTube Shorts is full of incredibly realistic all-generated videos, and our sense of what's real is gradually eroding. So why people question why no clear video of these children exists? Children who supposedly appear even in hospitals. The truth is, even if a recording did surface, we'd still be asking, but is it real? Interestingly, in the beginning, this absence of evidence functioned exactly like this classic self-protecting phenomenon motif found in many paranormal legends. Vampires don't appear in mirrors, Slender Man distorts cameras. In other words, the lack of proof becomes part of the narrative, turning the figure into an unverifiable yet persistent source of fear. And here's something even more intriguing. No witness has ever revealed their identity. No photos, no videos, no verifiable dates or locations. This makes proper investigation impossible. Yet the legend continues to survive. Well, except Brian Bethel, of course. The appearance of different versions of the legend, even without first-hand witnesses, can again be explained by the workings of the human mind. Have you ever heard of something called confabulation? Confabulation is when a person fills memory gaps with incorrect details, without any intention to lie. The brain unconsciously completes missing information with possible stories. It leads to distorted, fabricated, or entirely imagined memories, and it's especially common in traumatic, frightening, or ambiguous situations. When a person hears or experiences something unsettling, the mind builds a pattern, encounters something similar later, and that pattern kicks in, matching the event to a familiar narrative. As people share their stories with one another, they unintentionally create a shared web of illusions. This process is known as false memory contagion. This means someone with memory vulnerabilities might recall an encounter that mirrors the BEK legend, sometimes similar, sometimes with unique details, and genuinely believe it happened. Take the Cannock Chase incidents in Staffordshire between 2013 and 2015, which strongly resemble this phenomenon. Reports describe a black-eyed girl running through the woods at night, screaming or sometimes approaching people silently. The main difference is the Victorian-era clothing and the pale, ghost-like appearance. Canada shows even more parallels with the American accounts. The best known report supposedly occurred in Yukon, a couple encountering two BEK-like children on a snowy road. Alberta and Manitoba also feature tales of children knocking on doors, just like in BEK lore. The difference is that the stories are blended with local beliefs. These children appear quieter, maintain longer eye contact, have darkened skin tones, or display more lifeless expressions. Australia, Latin America, wherever you look, you'll find stories that echo this legend. What began as an internet meme has become a cultural symbol. It's now a modern folklore element explored in horror novels, podcast series, documentaries, short films, comic books, and indie horror games. It has even slipped into global folklore, generating its own cultural variations. Yet, unlike vampires, ghost phenomena, or even Slender Man, another internet-born figure, the BEK myth never cemented itself in cinema or television, nor did it spark widespread panic in real life. Still, the fact that it evolved, spread, and adapted across cultures, becoming a hybrid myth, makes it one of the most successful evolutions an internet meme can achieve. Wouldn't you agree? See you in the next video. Take care.